Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mysterious Mr. Ryan and welcome to the new Yankee Mansion. So let's jump right into the build. Now because this build is quite complex, I did end up having to put down a few markers before beginning, so please apologise in advance for the markers on the floor. Now the first thing I do is lay down a nice pathway leading up to the centre of the build itself, place down the first floor and a little area that will become the patio slash sort of decking a bit later on. As we move up, the second floor is near identical to the first, and the top floor is actually, you need to start off with a huge rectangle. Seems a bit strange, but to actually place this lip which you see me placing now, it doesn't work unless you do. You need to have a supporting wall there first. So first thing I do is just delete that off. You have to delete it wall by wall. If you delete it as a whole room, it takes the lip away with it. So annoying things, but I had to make do with things I could. As we move up to the upper story, now working on the rooms in the roof area. Now this is something that takes a bit of time to get right, and unfortunately does lead to having a zigzag level room walls. Unfortunately, not much I can do about that. The rooms in the roof just don't look right without it. As we move down to the ground floor, placing down the nice foundation wallpaper, use a black and grey brick theme. Place down some nice stairs and a light grey with some nice white banisters. As we move up to the top floor, placing columns on each of the levels, 2 on the bottom on either side of the banister and the 4 on the second and third floors. As we move to the final top part, we start working on the roofs themselves. Now, start off with the centre roof. I tried to keep the apex of the roofs quite low. I didn't want too high roofs. It actually looks quite awkward if I did have too high roofs. So lower them all down to match with the rooms in the roof, and place down this nice bit of red brick to act as a kind of separation between the roofs and the actual top itself. Without that, it just doesn't look quite right. So bear that in mind. If you want to build this yourself, you will need to do that. Now, because of the style of the roofs here, I'm actually laying down at the moment. This makes the build look good, but the problem is it does mean that placing windows is near impossible. I just want to reassure everyone as well that the roofs do not go through the walls. The minute you have an internal wall, the roofs will not pass through it. So just bear that in mind. If you are worried, the roofs will not impact the living space on the inside. With the windows though, that was an ever-present problem, so unfortunately I will be the first to admit I did end up having to use the move objects cheat, so apologies to all the purists out there. There was a cheat used in this building process, but it was a phrase that needs must comes to mind. For the walls, I opt for that nice grey brick for the columns and a nice red sort of wood panelling for the main bulk of the walls. Bear in mind as well that if you are looking to build this yourself and you do not have the expansion pack, or if you want to download this yourself and you do not have the new expansion pack, I'm afraid that a large portion of the objects probably will not be in your build. I do apologise in advance, but a lot of the new expansion was used in this build for wallpapering and for a few of the items. Now here you see just placing the windows on the upper story, and as you can see the move objects cheat coming into effect. Just placing down some nice windows here, 3 in the centre, 2s on the either side of the 3s. As we move in then, just placing down a nice hedge border, and using the move objects tool to its advantage, I scale up these columns from something quite small and actually put them in amongst the hedge. I think they act as a nice corner. I only opted to use them on the front. They didn't look quite right surrounding the whole build. As we move into the front garden now, just working on the fountain areas. Now, wanted to give a nice area the fountains could go, so fence off a nice part, put a nice bit of red sort of low bushes in and around the edge of the border, just using that now. Again, with the move object sheet still enabled, I do actually place down some curved bushes in the center with the square ones surrounding it, so you end up with that nice sort of square, and then I actually put a fountain on top. It gives the fountain that sort of under sort of brush effect. Really makes it look quite good in my opinion. If you don't like that though, you could always take that away if you wanted to build this yourself, or if you download this build, just move the fountain, delete those, and you won't have a problem. Just mirroring exactly the same part of the build on the other side. Very important that it mirrored. Only problem with this build is because of the size and shape of it, it is actually slightly off center. There was nothing I could do about that. It's because I wanted to use a 3-wide door, it just didn't work if I didn't. Place down a couple of trees in the opening to match, and work on the patio itself out back. So lay down some stairs and some fences, and as we move on, I just actually start to place down some items. So first thing I do is place down some chairs and also these lamps. Now the lamps really makes the build look good. Now possibly not quite in with the theme, given the fact that the theme of this build is early settlers, but I do think it works quite nice. Lay down a nice little game for people to play outside, and a campfire with some stones and some tree stump chairs. Now as I said earlier, this does use a lot of stuff from the new expansion a lot of the garden stuff is from it, so bear that in mind. If you don't have it, you may run into problems there. As we lay down some lighting for the inside, I've laid down some stairs leading up to the 2 floors, and just lay down some lighting to try and overall light up the centre of the build. As we move in, I use a wooden flooring, again using the new expansion flooring. I really like some of the new wood tiles they've chosen and some of the wood wallpapers they've used. Really nice effect, but I opt to use some classic wallpapers here for the inside. As we move on now, I wanted to create a sort of sitting area. Now, the one item that this was missing is a large table, so I ended up having to make one myself. I actually used the colour tool to actually change the colours to make it look like a 3-wood system for the table in the centre. I think it gives a grander effect and actually makes the table look quite good. The other thing this expansion was missing is a moose's head. This is something that I feel like a stag, a deer, a moose's head would have really looked good on the wall. In this type of build, I think it would have made it much better. So in the end, I opted for these coat of arms with the swords. Not quite the same theme, but overall I think it works in spite of that. Place down there just a nice statue there with the red top hat. I'm quite a big fan of those red top hats. I think they do look quite good on those statues, so I do try and use them in as many builds as I can. I think that must be the only item that's present in pretty much all of my builds. I don't think there's one that I haven't used it in. Side note though. As we move in then, just laying down a couple of chessboards for people to play chess at and a piano as well. Now it's time to work on the kitchen. So the kitchen, start off with the fridge and the wood burner, lay down some nice countertops and some cabinets above and to the side. The only thing that breaches this is always the fire alarm. It's one of those pieces I've put in every build since I started playing The Sims 1. I was always told to do that, so I do break my theme every time I do a kitchen, just to put that in. A nice table and chairs. I did originally put a cross table in there, but it just didn't work with the chairs. There just wasn't enough space for them all, so in the end just chose with a nice straight table and just separated it with a nice dark wood, so you could tell the difference between the kitchen and the dining area. A couple of suits of armour, and then it's time to move on to the upper story. So the first floor, this is where we put the bedrooms and the bathrooms. Now these are sort of the master bedroom and bathrooms for each of the each of the people. Start off with a red and pink theme on one side and a green and blue on the other. The green and blue complement each other really nicely, and those green floorboards I really like. The red again really nice and complements quite nicely with the pink. Lay down a couple of lighting parts for each of the rooms, and same goes with the bathrooms. And now it's time to actually start working on the inside. So the first thing I do is utilise the new items and just get a nice bed in there with the nice wood. I've just turned off the cheat there as well. I was having problems with placing some items, so I had to turn it off. And as we move in, place down a nice plant, some alarm clocks, a mirror and a screen. Just a nice place, a nice mat under the bed. As we move on to the bathroom now, a couple of, there are actually showers although they look like baths, a couple of sinks with a nice towel rail and a couple of toilets as well. And I think the mats were pretty much the finishing touch on this. They sort of created a nice sort of separate element away from the floor, which made it look like the items really belong there. So again, nice little subtle touch that again I would recommend as a nice build tip to anyone who's struggling to give their items a bit of definition. As we move on to the second bedroom now, pretty much exactly the same layout, very similar if not identical items used throughout. One of those things, my OCD doesn't like it if I choose to use different things, but I do think it is something quite nice. The overall design is something I'm quite pleased with. So just for the pink bathroom, chose to use red mats and sinks and baths as usual. As we move on then, just working on the central area, place down a couple of banisters on each of the floors. I just wanted to give a little subtle seating area, nothing too exciting, nothing special, just wanted a nice area where people come read some books. So place down a couple of bookcases and just a sofa in the middle with a coffee table and a mat underneath. Nothing too exciting, just a nice place to sit and read. Finally then, moving on to the top floor itself. First thing I wanted to do with this is, for the first time I've actually built what I consider a family orientated build. So this actually has space for children, another bathroom and even a nursery. So placing down some lighting for the upstairs now. As you can see, the awkwardness of the rooms does make it a bit hard to work in, but again I think I managed to create something that is both practical, livable and I think is sort of aesthetically pleasing. So This area does have a nice archway that leads into the nursery. It's got a separate bathroom for the children, and each child has their own room. There's a pink and a blue room, obviously for a boy and a girl. If you did want to change anything up, you wanted to remove those items until your Sims got to that stage, you could quite easily do that in a build mode. I just wanted to lay everything out so you had a fully completed house. Each child has their own desk with a chair, again to match their colour. I opted for a pink violin in the girls' bedroom, and just laid down some bookcases, some mats, and also a couple of cuddly toys. I also used to use these measure gauges throughout the build, quite pleased with how they look. Just as we move into the upstairs bathroom now, place down a couple of toilets, a couple of baths. Again, I stuck with a theme. It didn't look right if I just put one in there, so I thought I'd do a blue and a pink theme throughout. Again, subtle but slightly different touch, which overall makes the build just look that little bit better. As we move in then, this is the nursery area, so place down a couple of bassinets, again separated by colour. You don't have to do this, I just opted for that. Without it, the build did look quite wrong, and the nursery seemed quite bare without the bassinets in there. So place down a cuddly toy, another little ruler there to measure the children's height, a nice doll's house in the centre, and just a mat to finish it off. This final area then, I wanted to again create a nice place for people to sit. That's one thing I wanted to do throughout this build. I wanted to have nice comfortable areas, nothing too cramped, nothing too spacious. I wanted to keep this minimalistic but still practical. So place down a bookcase, and finally a couple of easels just to finish off the main build. Just going around making sure everything is done, wallpapered everything, and finally the build is complete. So as I move into some glamour shots now, I just want to talk a very little bit about the build. Now the build itself is something quite complex, so if you do want to build this yourself, bear in mind you will need to put quite a bit of time aside. It's not something you can rush. The build itself, however, is available for download for the people who want to just use the one I've made here. You can download it via the gallery page on The Sims 4. You can reach it at Mysterious Mr. Ryan. If you want to stay up to date with this build or anything else I build, you can follow me on Twitter, links in the description down below. And if you want to get a little notification through the powers of technology, YouTube will send you one. Hit the subscribe and like button down below. But for now, my name is Mysterious Mr. Ryan, and I'm out. I will see you later. Take care and have a good one.